not know what to think. The drive-by media is in a state of panic over what's just happened at the Manafort trial. Greetings, my friends, and welcome back. It's great to have you once again here at the EIB Network and the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. Now, see, this is what happened. I have the whole show prepared, laid out, ready to go, and then this happens. I mean, this happened just 2-3 minutes ago. What happened is this. The jury sent a note to the judge, T.S. Ellis, asking what they should do if they cannot reach a consensus, a unanimous conclusion. The jury asked in a note, if we can't come to a consensus for a single count, how can we fill in the verdict sheet? Now, I'm not at all clear what this means. There are 18 counts. And do they mean they can't come to an agreement on any when they say a single count? Or are they in agreement on 17, but can't come to an agreement on the 18th? Now, the drive-by media, for some reason, is taking this as horrible news. Drive-by media is totally invested in Manafort, as I said, being lined up at dawn within minutes of the verdict and being shot by somebody wearing a Trump mask, wearing a Make America Great a hat. That's what they want to have. And because this will validate whatever Mueller is doing, which, you know, I'm sorry, I need another rant on Mueller today. I'm going to wait a while to do it, but I got a text message from a friend of mine late yesterday afternoon. Do people not realize what's going on? And he had a great point that I've made once before, and I need to reiterate it, which we will do in due course. So the judge told the jury, well, you can do a partial verdict, but I don't want to go there yet. So he sent them back. He sent them back to the jury room and told them to keep deliberating until they can reach consensus. The jury said they needed a new verdict sheet, and they asked what not coming to a conclusion would mean for the final verdict. What would not coming to a conclusion mean for the final verdict? Well, what does it mean when you don't have a decision on a charge? Well, mistrial, hung jury, or what have you. But remember, there are 18 counts, and as I read everything about, everybody's assuming they've agreed on 17, and there's just one that they haven't agreed on. Now, if that's how everybody's interpreting it, and then the drive-bys are gloomy. I mean, CNN is gloomy about this. CNN, I think they were expecting this jury to, be gone less time than the OJ jury was. You remember how long the OJ jury was out? Just a little history here. I mean, the OJ trial, how many years did that go on? Seemed like, well, no, the actual trial. I mean, the case was, no, the trial was months. Remember all of that detailed DNA evidence that Barry Scheck presented? With all of that stuff, the jury has gone less than 3 hours, and they actually had their decision in 5 minutes. They just waited 2.5 hours to make it look like they had deliberated. And that contains some really technical stuff in it. I think the drive-bys expected Manafort to be slam dunk guilty inside of the first day, and then have the execution that night, within everybody gathering at the Old Ebbitt Grill for a party, which is right next to the White House. But that hasn't happened, so they're a little gloomy out there. But we'll just have to wait and see what it all means, because it really is unclear. Ladies and gentlemen, every day I've come to realize here that every day doing this program, we, just by virtue of collecting things that are happening to talk to you about, by doing show prep, that it is actually becoming very easy and becoming a very regular thing to chronicle the descent into real insanity, real madness. I'm not using figures of speech. Real insanity, literal madness on the part of people on the left. And I have 3 examples today. One of them I mentioned yesterday at the end of the program. Grab audio soundbite number 16. I didn't have a chance to get to this yesterday because I only... Yeah, there's one more thing. You know, folks, I went home yesterday. I was beating myself up all last night. I was just livid. And I've told me I've got to change the way I do this. Yesterday, I had on the soundbite roster, I had that audio of Phil Mudd going bonkers on CNN, which Trump has been tweeting about. Phil Mudd is on with Paris Denard, who's an African-American conservative, and just loses it. I mean, just literally loses his composure. He's a CIA guy. He's one of these swamp intelligence rats that makes up the deep state that just despises Trump, and he's lost his marbles. They all are losing their marbles, and they're doing it in public. In one sense, it's very helpful to Trump, if you ask me. He goes out and describes these people as Looney Tunes, and then they go on TV and act it out. So in that sense, it's helpful. But this guy is supposedly one of our most respected intelligence analysts. He's one of the men that we've been relying on for years. He's one of the men that we trust. The guy's losing his marbles on TV, talking to an African-American who's a Trump supporter. He can't believe it. He can't process it. He actually told Paris Denard to get the hell off the set. Well, anyway, I had it yesterday, and I forgot that it was there. And I said, there's got to be a better way. Like right now. Well, I don't want to burden you with this. It's not your problem. But I just forgot that it was there. It's like having to remember I've got 75 things here. And I forgot it. I was all prepared. If I could have been a near exclusive yet, then I go home and I see Trump tweeting about it. And I was just mad at myself like you can't believe. So that's one of the things we're going to get to earlier. I intended to get to that first, but then this stuff came up. The Manafort trial and my desire to document the fact that right before our very eyes, the left, which everybody thinks is going to sweep back into power in a massive blue wave landslide, is literally losing its mind. They are literally going insane. 3 examples. Here's the first. I mentioned yesterday afternoon, Stevie Wonder on CBS this morning.
I just feel that all these various diseases that we have and all these things that are happening in the world, in part, is because there are those who don't believe in global warming, don't believe that what we do affects the world, what we eat affects the world, affects us. And I just hope that people will grow up and grow out of the foolishness and know that we all, by how we think, how we do, how we treat others, we will never unlock the key until we truly let go of the hatred, the bigotry, the evilness, the selfishness. When we do that, then we can unlock some of those things that keep us in this place.
Well, I'm sorry, the bite doesn't contain what I thought it contained. So it may be one of those days. The story is that Stevie Wonder blames global warming for Aretha Franklin's cancer. He was spreading the conspiracy theory that global warming is linked to cancer. And he was talking, he said all the things that you heard him say here. And he thinks that the lack of belief in it, that people not believing in climate change and not believing in global warming is causing way too many people to eat the wrong things and not conserve in the right way, and creating a bunch of carcinogens out there that happen to catch up with Aretha. And if you and me had only believed in climate change and had been living our lives as though the way we live affects climate change and therefore changed the way we lived, if we had all voted Democrat, and if we had all believed in big government and sent as much money as we could to government, then Aretha would never have gotten cancer. And he means it. He means it. Now this, folks, how else will you categorize this? This is dumb. It's stupid. The thing is, he believes it. That's what makes this stuff dangerous. He really believes this stuff. Here's the next example. Oprah Winfrey promotes Shout Your Abortion movement, where women brag about their abortions. She's promoting this. Oprah Winfrey waded deeper into political waters this summer by promoting the Shout Your Abortion movement and its efforts to normalize abortion, which is what? See, I'm going to tell you what abortion is, and I'm going to be the one controversial. Oprah can run around and tell women to run around and start shouting and bragging about them, and she's normal. If I describe what abortion actually is, I am the problem. The July issue of the O magazine, that's the Oprah's magazine, featured Shout Your Abortion founder Amelia Bono in its inspiration section. Amelia Bono, who began the campaign to urge women to brag about aborting their unborn babies, soon will be coming out with a new book by the same title. She told Oprah's magazine how it all began. This great, great story all began in 2015 when I found out that the House of Representatives had voted to defund Planned Parenthood. I kind of unraveled. I opened Facebook, and without thinking, like a year ago, I had an abortion at Planned Parenthood, and I remember this experience with a nearly inexpressible level of gratitude. I hit post 153 words later, and my life changed. Everything changed. So Amelia Bono said that the campaign really took off when a friend shared her post on Twitter with the hashtag #ShoutYourAbortion. She blamed the pro-life movement for trying to silence women who have had abortion. You notice we're trying to silence Brennan by taking away his security clearance when nobody's doing anything of the sort. We're not trying to silence anybody. That's not what we do. They always accuse us of doing what they're actually doing. So there's the Oprah, who's signed on now with the Shout Your Abortion movement, promoting it, urging it, bragging about it. But now, my friends, the pièce de résistance. Exhibit 3 of the left's descent into utter insanity and madness. Our subject, the LGBTQIA, see, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and I'm lost at QIA. It doesn't matter. They know what it means, and that's enough. We're here today to discuss the LGBTQIA Safe Sex Guide. And at the root of the need for the LGBTQIA Safe Sex Guide is an anger. The people at the LGBTQIA are livid that a bunch of old white guys named human body parts. They don't like the fact that they have to call their vagina a vagina. It doesn't fulfill their destiny. It limits their capabilities. They need a new term for vagina to encompass all that they do in the land of LGBTQIA. And so, I'm not making this up, going forward, the vagina will now be called the front hole. And the anus will be called the back hole. The mouth will be called the upper hole. In LGBTQIA safe sex literature. So this means, my friends, that, for example, those pussy hats, pussy hats, those will now be called front hole hats, right? Is that? I just want to make sure I'm learning. See, I don't want to offend the LGBTQIA members. So from now on, the Pusai hats will be front hole hats. Now, Lewinsky's. We all know what a Lewinsky is. People think a Lewinsky is a sex act. But we're now going to need to label, we're going to, like the mouth is the upper front hole to describe in detail. This is why they want to do this. But I'm not kidding. They really resent the fact that a bunch of old people, scientists, primarily white people, named human body parts and organs and functions and did not get anywhere near inclusive enough. Can we dumb down the population any more than this? The penis, ladies and gentlemen, shall be called the front stick. Yesterday, Bob. Welcome back, my friends. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh. By the way, a companion story that I meant to mention along with the LGBTQIA. Let me just read you, by the way, a paragraph under the explanation of why they're doing this. Traditional safe-sex guides are often structured in a way that presumes everyone's gender is the same as the sex they were assigned at birth. Well, of course. By the way, do you think you were assigned your sex? Is that how you look at it? Snurtley, were you assigned a male? And where did the assignation happen? When you were in the womb, do you recall going before a review board in heaven or wherever, and somebody in a flowing white robe and a big white beard assigned you to be male, and that you didn't want to be male, but you had no choice at that point? So if you survived your birth, which is a questionable thing in the American left, and if you survived your birth, now you can challenge your assignation. Is that how you look at it? Did anybody that you grew up with in your demographic group or age group look at their sexuality that way? That somebody, somewhere, had assigned them their sex? And, okay, me either. I have never looked at my gender as an assignation, but these people clearly believe it. Traditional safe sex guides are often structured in a way that presumes. See, right there you have prejudice. Somebody presumes that everyone's gender, and here are the possibilities they mention: male, female, non-binary, trans. Okay, male, female, what do you think non-binary is? So I don't know what binary would mean. You go both ways. You got both. Non-binary means you got nothing? That somebody forgot to assign you? That can't be what. Or else trans. Anyway, traditional safe sex guides are often structured in a way that presumes everybody's gender is the same as the sex they were assigned at birth, which is male, female, intersex, or differences in sexual development. So it's because some people were misassigned. A bunch of people were assigned a sexuality they wanted no part of, but of course in the womb they had no voice because the world was discriminating against them even then. You have half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Rush Limbaugh, your guiding light here at the one and only Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. A President, the Manafort jury and the situation there. Let me give you a little bit more data on this. It's not factual data. We don't really know anymore. These are possibilities, I guess you'd say. And it looks like there might be a partial verdict coming. And the judge did what most experts would suggest the right thing to do is. So the jury came back and said, look, we're having trouble coming to consensus or agreement on a single count. Now, again, I am Mr. Precision. I am Mr. Reality. And the way that's written, it's impossible to know what they're talking about. There are 18 counts. And they could have said, Judge, we can't come to agreement on a single count. Or it could mean, Judge, there's just one count we can't come to an agreement on. So we don't know. I mean, I don't know. It seems to me that everybody's assuming that there are 17 counts the jury has come to a consensus unanimity on, only one count that they haven't. But I'm not sure. Anyway, the judge sent them back and told them to keep deliberating. He did tell them that a partial verdict is possible, but he doesn't want that. Now, if sending the jury back to finish the job does not succeed, and it probably won't, otherwise the jury would not have sent this note in the first place. The foreman is probably exasperated. He's probably, he or she, they're very frustrated that they can't come to unanimity here. And so when it looks bleak, that's when you go tell the judge. That's when you send the note to Dad. Dad, we can't agree on where to go on vacation, or whatever the thing is. But that means they're frustrated, which means that even after the judge sends them back, it's highly unlikely that they're going to magically come to agreement on whatever it is they cannot agree to. So when it is determined by the judge that sending them back to try to finish doesn't work, that's when the judge can take a partial verdict. And that is where they would return a verdict on any of the counts that they have resolved unanimously. Now, the key with that is that once the verdict on those counts is announced in court, it is final. There is nothing that can be done to change it. So let's just play games. Let's assume that they've agreed on 17. But there's one count they can't agree on. So the judge sends them back. If those, and then they still can't agree, and the judge, you know what, it makes me think that it's all 18 that they can't agree on. But let's stick with what everybody else forgets. They got agreement on 17. One of them is hung. If they come back and the judge announces a partial verdict and they announce the verdict on the 17 counts they're unanimously agreed to, those 17 verdicts cannot be revisited when the jury is sent back again to try to resolve the one remaining count. Once a verdict is announced in court, it is final. And if the judge then persuades them to go back and keep deliberating on the unresolved counts, the jury cannot reconsider the counts they resolved in the partial verdict or verdicts which were announced in court. And that's why the judge first encourages them to try to reach a verdict on all the charges. It gets risky to send them back to deliberate on anything unresolved. If you let them return a verdict on some counts, and then after that they may try to change their minds on the resolved counts, and if that happens, then you've got an appellate problem. You've got a big can of worms if on previously announced verdicts the jury starts rethinking those. That's why judges don't like to send them back after partial verdicts are announced. So that's pretty much where we are. And again, I don't think anybody knows, unless I've missed something here, whether there's one count they're hung up on or all of them. And since I learned of this, I've not had time to devote myself to figuring that out myself. So until we know differently, we'll go with that presumption. And this is why it ticks me off that people can't be precise. But in this case, it's the jury that's imprecise, so we've got to go with the flow. Judge, we can't agree on a single count. Okay, go back and keep chatting. We don't know if it's all 18 or just one. But as I say, looking at the faces of the anchors on CNN, they were very, very gloomy out there. You know, that execution at dawn looks like it's getting more and more problematic. Now, President Trump. This was a tweet from last night. Just watched former intelligence official Philip Mudd become totally unglued and weird while debating the wonderful Paris Denard over Brennan's security clearance. Denard destroyed him, but Mudd is no mental condition to even have a clearance himself, should it be revoked. So I saw that tweet last night, and I just started beating myself up like you can't believe it. I really get mad when I find out that I had gold in the stack stuff and just forgot it. And so it makes I've got to find a different way of organized, because I've got sometimes 8 different stacks of stuff here, and after the first 30 minutes they're all intermingled and I don't know what's where. And it's impossible to use a computer or iPad for this. There's just not fast enough access. And so I forget that this was there, but I want to go back and play it now, because it is outrageous. And what it illustrates is Trump is driving these people crazy. This is actually another example of the left genuinely going insane. And they're doing it in public. They're doing it on TV. And it's this kind of stuff they think is going to be attracting majority numbers of voters. All it's doing is convincing people that all of us talking about a deep state, a cabal, a bunch of people trying to overthrow Trump is real. These people are making it obvious that they exist. So let's go to the audio sound bites. There are 2 of them here. This was Friday night, and it was on Anderson Cooper's show. Jim Sciutto was sitting in for Anderson Cooper, and he had Philip Mudd, the former deputy director of the CIA Counter-Terrorist Center. The guy's a big lib. He's a fabulous leftist. He's constantly angry. He's got a very superiorist attitude in general. He's an arrogant, condescending guy. And he just can't abide the fact that Donald Trump is in office, that Donald Trump won, and he really can't believe that there are African Americans who like Donald Trump and support him. Which, by the way, if I may make a brief departure, have you seen the latest approval numbers, African Americans for Trump? In some polls, you're right, above 30%. So how is that not translate to Trump having a general overall approval number of 50 at least? How does this not happen? Republican presidents generally have approval numbers from African Americans in the what? 10%, 12%? This is a record number. 30% approval from the African American population. That is, and the unemployment numbers at a record low in the African American population and community. How can you have that high approval in the African American community and still be in some of these approval numbers at 40 or 44%? And then on the basis of that, you then next predict a gigantic blue wave of Democrats taking over the House. And then if you start digging deep, you find out that in a number of states that Trump did well, so are Republican candidates for the House, for the Senate, for governor. And then you find out in some states that the early voting, the Republicans are participating at a greater rate than Democrats. And then you find out that in some of these states, Republican registration is higher than Democrat, but yet we're told that all the enthusiasm's on the left. The Republicans are complacent and are sitting at home. It just doesn't make any sense. Trump voters are among the most actively engaged in American politics day to day that I've ever seen. There's nothing complacent about them. The average Trump voter is not sitting at home, not thinking his vote isn't needed anymore. Who believes this stuff? Well, the drive-bys are trying to tell us that that's the profile of your average Republican midterm election voter, that they don't think their vote's needed. They won in 2016 and it's over. So they can sit at home and they can relax. And that, once again, is insulting to Republican voters who know full well what is at stake here. And it's the same people telling us this that told us Hillary was going to win by 6 or 7 points in 2016, that Trump barely had a 7 or 8% chance of winning. It's the same people telling us the same stuff, using the same data, when none of it makes much sense. But I have to, it's never made sense to me that the people who elected Donald Trump, the people that voted for Donald Trump, and there's some 62, 63 million of them, are complacent and don't care about the midterms and don't realize what's at stake. How can anybody think that? Well, you would think it if you go statistically, if you follow the stats of midterm election turnout versus presidential election turnout. So if you want to believe all of the stats from all of the previous elections, and if you want to assign a Trump presidency as no different than any previous presidency, then you'll agree with the premise that it's an off-year election, which means the president's party is going to automatically lose 15 seats. I mean, that's just in the stats. That's the average. And then you factor in that everybody hates Trump. Well, that's another 5 points. And then you factor in the Democrat enthusiasm. Then you factor in the Republican laziness. Why, the Republicans may as well stay home because they've got no chance. That's what they're telling us. But none of that makes any sense. The Trump presidency can't be plugged into that model of all presidencies prior to his. Neither can Trump voters. That's why I'm not buying this blue wave business. But especially when you hear people like Phil Mudd, you hear about Oprah out there shouting your abortion and bragging about it, Stevie Wonder, climate change caused Aretha to get pancreatic cancer. And those are just today's examples of the literal madness and insanity that represents the opposition to Trump. And here she is, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, now suggesting the media can never show up at her events so that people can feel safe. The media threatens her attendees. What? Well, there's a lesson there about how socialists and authoritarians actually view the media. And then, of course, have you heard about Camera Hog? You heard the latest about this guy? Oh, no. Camera Hog is just livid that Pelosi will not just get the F out. She's too old. She's too wrinkled. She's causing everybody on the Democrat side to lose. It's time for her to just get the F out and let them, the young people, take over. This is David Camera Hog. Wait till somebody tells him that the central fundraising arm of the Democrats this season is going to be Hillary Clinton. You know, wait till he says, well, she should get the F out too. She's another old hag, just like Pelosi is. And the guy is livid. The guy is angry. He wants Pelosi gone. He wants everybody over 30 out of the Democrat Party. I'll be back in just a second, my friends. I didn't lose my place. Okay, about to run out of time. So here's Mudd. Here's Phil Mudd, Friday night CNN. And he's with Paris Denard, who is the former director of Black Outreach for George W. Bush. So he's a conservative Republican. And the question, Jim Sciutto, CNN, says, why is he doing it? Why is he taking the clearance away from Brennan?
A lot of these people that have these security clearances, and this is the secret in the swampy Washington, D.C., they have them and they keep them because it's profitable for them after they leave government. Because if you have a security clearance, especially high-level security clearances, your contracts and your consulting gigs pay you a lot more money because of the access that you have. I hope the president continues to do this.
Profitable, Paris. When I am requested to sit on an advisory board, let me ask you one question. How much do you think I'm paid to do that at the request of the U.S. government? Give me one answer, and you got 10 seconds. How much?
I'll ask you a question. How much are you paid for your consulting?
Answer the question.
Contract?
You see, what happened here is that Paris Denard nailed it. Phil Mudd has just been called out. The security clearance does mean money, and it means potentially a lot of money. And it means status. That's why they are among the reasons they are so valuable. And this guy had the audacity, Paris Denard, to call Phil Mudd out. Phil Mudd's not a host. He's just another guest. I'll ask you a question. How much are you paid for consulting? You got 10 seconds. You give me one answer. You got 10 seconds. But Paris Denard was unflappable. And the bite then continued.
You get more money when having a security clearance.
That is
Stop acting like that
incorrect.
doesn't happen.
I have
That's the
zero
truth.
consulting relationships with the U.S. government. Zero.
I'm not talking, Phil, that's a good talking point. I'm not talking about relationships with the government. I'm talking about in the private sector. When you have a security
I
clearance
have
and you
zero
keep it.
relationships with the private sector that involve my security clearance. Zero. I get $0 from consulting companies that deal with the U.S. government. Are we clear?
Well, I will be clear in saying that everybody in Washington, D.C. knows if you don't want to be honest about it, that's on you. But if you have a security clearance and you keep it, you get more money to have it.
We're done. Get out.
It's not your show, so I'm
25 years
staying
in
right
the
here.
service, and this is
Don't
the
be defensive about
Get
this.
out.
Get out! It's not your show. I'm not gay. Get out! This guy, Mud, I'm telling you, is arrogant. He's condescending. He's not a nice guy, and he's one of these people that thinks he's super special, and he's playing word games here. These people parlay their security clearances into all kinds of benefits, including financial, such as being paid by CNN to be a regular appearing analyst, for crying out loud. But he's, well, I'm not paid by government or in any relationship advisory what I have in the government. Denard was correct. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the private. The guy got called out and could not deal.
After they made it.
Okay, I had a chance to read some things. It appears that most of the drive-bys think the Manafort jury has agreed on 17 counts and that there's only one count that they can't agree on. So, if that's the case, I don't know why they're gloomy. We'll be back after this. Hey, folks, welcome back. Great to have you here. It is the one and only EIB Network, and I am your one and only busy broadcast host, Rush Limbaugh. And we are here behind the golden EIB microphone. The telephone number, and we will be getting to your phone calls in this hour, is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbaugh@eibnet.us. I was reading an NFL website. Doesn't matter what it is. It's not, because I read a comment from a reader of this website about the ongoing controversy the NFL is having over what to do about the national anthem and the players taking a knee. And, you know, there is a massive boycott for the NFL games planned on Veterans Day, November 12th. Have you heard about this? A bunch of fans are trying to organize a massive boycott of the NFL on that one day. I don't know how successful they're going to be, but it's all rooted in the fact that they are protesting the flag and protesting the military when they are rich beyond most people's wildest imaginations for playing a game. You know, you've heard the drill from people to make this argument. Didn't have to go to college, they had to go, but didn't have to attend class, have had private tutors. As star athletes, the red carpet's been rolled out for them. Who are they to complain? Especially when their protests insult the very people who are paying all the money that makes them wealthy. That would be the fans and stuff. So I don't know how successful it's going to be. But in reading a bunch of various NFL websites, I'm always fascinated to read the comments, because you find left-wing insanity on full display there, too. And, folks, I'm telling you, it is all around us. It has been building, it is being amplified, and it's being presented as normal. It's being presented, discussed, reported upon as quite normal, this madness and insanity. So I want to read an idea that a fan at one of these websites had. And I just want, as I read this, I want you to think, I want you to imagine yourself watching an NFL game on television, or you are there, you're at an NFL stadium. Here is the fan's idea. What if before the national anthem at every game, before the national anthem, the stadium public address announcer observed a moment of silence for social injustice? The PA announcer could read something like this: "Ladies and gentlemen, the National Football League and the home team strongly believe in equality and social justice. As Americans and human beings, We should all strive to be kind to each other, and we should all treat each other with dignity and respect, regardless of race, color, gender, creed, religion, or sexual orientation, while in this stadium today, and after we leave and go about our lives. We will now observe a moment of silence to reflect on those who have suffered injustice in our society. Thank you. And then during that moment of silence for social injustice is when the players could kneel or raise a fist or lock arms. But then when the anthem was played, all that had to end and everybody had to stand, put their hand over the heart and all that. Now, imagine yourself at a stadium where that is blared out over the PA system. Especially as Americans and human beings, we should all strive to be kind to each other. And we should all treat each other with dignity and respect, regardless of what's going to happen on the field in mere moments. They're going to try to kill each other. Sheer brutality, organized brutality is going to be occurring on that field mere seconds after the moment of silence for victims of social injustice. The fan here, I'm sure, is dead serious. And by the way, the pièce de la résistance, it had a lot of fans agreeing with him, thinking this is a great compromise. Can you imagine yourselves showing up at an NFL stadium and having to stand for a moment of silence before the anthem? This is more, folks, this is more than just your average cultural evolution. This is more than just one generation being different than the next or than its predecessor. What's happened, the radicalization, the dumbing down. You know, what we hope is that every succeeding generation gets smarter, gets more productive, becomes wiser. That is not happening here. We are witnessing before our eyes the dumbing down of our population. We see it in the absolute worthlessness of college degrees. Not just the choices you can make in majors, but even if you take a traditional major, you don't know anything in it when you get your degree. You've been taught a bunch of social justice garbage. You've been taught a bunch of multiculturalism. You have been taught a whole bunch of identity politics stuff, but you don't know, for example, if your degree is economics, you don't know it. You know anything about it. I find it worrisome because it's being done and it's happening here on purpose. Now, it has not been that long since I warned you that the real casualty of this entire Russian collusion investigation is the damage being done to the integrity of American elections. And as each day passes, I become more convinced that this is going to be a serious problem going forward. I think it already has become one. And I think the evidence is out there each and every day for it. And in saying this, I think that this Russia investigation, the anti-Trumpers, and even the conservative never-Trumpers who join the other side for whatever really lazy reasons, are helping further the notion that the 2016 election was not legitimate, that the Russians actually had something to do with it, which, you know, when the pedal has hit the metal, and when it's come time to open everything up and tell us what they've got, they have not gone there. Remember Mueller's latest indictments of the 12 Russians that he claims were tampering and hacking and doing all this other stuff. Remember when Rosenstein announced those indictments at a ceremony, press conference at the Department of Justice? He made a point of saying way into his announcement, it was missed, it was not highlighted, it was not headlined. But it should have been the lead. It should have been the only thing that Rosenstein actually made a big deal of. He said None of these indictments, nothing that has come from the special counsel investigation to date, nothing. Zip, zero, nada. There is nothing in these indictments or anywhere in this investigation that says the Russians affected the outcome of a single election. There is no evidence. The special counsel has developed no evidence that the Russians even changed one vote. That's it. That's book. That is open and shut. That's the end of it. That's pedal to the metal. That's the rubber meeting the road. And the whole premise of Russian meddling has been blown to smithereens by Rod Rosenstein. And nobody is focusing on it. Nobody made mention of it. It was not featured in any news reports. The only thing that was featured naturally was the indictments of the 12 Russians who will never see a U.S. courtroom. And Mueller, this man of impeccable integrity, engaging in nothing but PR indictments so that he can make it look like his investigations found Russians somewhere. But Rosenstein made a point of saying not one vote has been changed, no evidence to suggest even a single vote has been changed, no evidence to suggest an election outcome has been affected. So isn't all the rest of this moot? Doesn't all the rest of this basically mean nothing then? Because isn't that the premise under which this all started? That the Russians had tampered, that the Russians had meddled, that the Russians working with Trump may have stolen the election? So after a year and after all the indictments, Mueller still has no evidence that any of that ever happened? That was not the lead. It was buried in every report and not mentioned in most. And yet, look, in every discussion of elections coming up, the Russians and potential hacking is a major, major factor. Yesterday, we got a story from Microsoft. You ready for this? Microsoft uncovers more Russian attacks ahead of the midterms. Wait a minute. There isn't any evidence that the Russians changed a single vote. There isn't any evidence that the Russians' efforts changed a single election outcome. But yet, Microsoft uncovers more Russian attacks ahead of the midterms. Now, these are fascinating. Microsoft said Tuesday it has uncovered new Russian hacking attempts targeting U.S. political groups ahead of the midterm elections. The company said that a hacking group tied to the Russian government created fake internet domains that appeared to spoof two American conservative organizations, the Hudson Institute and the International Republican Institute. Now, wait a minute. Wait just a minute here. Russian hackers are targeting anti-Trump Republicans? That's what we are supposed to believe. The Russian military that supposedly hacked the Democrat Party before 2016 has begun to target conservative think tanks that are anti-Donald Trump. What does this mean? It means that a gigantic lie that has been around for 2 years is continuing to be spread. What this Microsoft story really means is that Trump and Russia are colluding to take action and harm anti-Trump Republican and conservative organizations. Microsoft's point in pointing out that the two groups that were targeted by Russians happen to be conservative Republican never-Trumpers is meant to convey the big lie that Trump and the Russians are colluding against anybody that's anti-Trump. As I've said yesterday, I've run out of words to describe the outrageousness of this. The idea that the Russians had anything to do with the 2016 election has been denied by Rod Rosenstein as recently as the last indictments being announced. Besides that, there isn't any evidence whatsoever that the Russians had anything to do with the Trump side of the election. The evidence is that the Russians and Hillary and the DNC were colluding against Trump. But there isn't any evidence that whatever the Russians did affected a single election. And yet, look, the upcoming elections are already tainted, every one of them being discussed under the auspices of potential Russian hacking. And bingo, here we go. Why, the Russians are already at it again. And this time they're hacking never-Trumper conservative sites. That's meant to tell readers that the Russians and Trump are still aligned. The Russians and Trump are still working together, or at least the Russians love Trump, and the Russians are trying to help Trump. This is so fraudulently outrageous. And the drive-by media is carrying all the water and trying to pollute everybody's minds about the upcoming elections. Grab audio soundbite number 6. Jonathan Martin, our old buddy. I used to be a source for the guy, not a blind source, but he used to ask my opinion on stuff back when he was at Politico. He was on CNN's New Day today with John Berman. Question, it is glaring to wake up 2 months before the 2018 midterms to find out that the Russian intelligence services are back at it, trying to hack the 2018 election. This is Microsoft's story. The Russians are moving on conservative anti-Trump think tanks. It's bogus. Anyway, here's Jonathan Martin, who's now at the New York Times, reaction.
Well, and they're going to keep doing this, and they're going to try and do the same thing in 2020. And the question is, will the country be prepared? And by the way, not just the federal government, but for those of us, John, who every Tuesday night cover a primary of some kind across this country, we know that the election system in this country is a patchwork system that is basically done on the county, and that some of these localities have a difficult time, John, counting votes on election night, let alone protecting themselves from a cyber attack. So I think that should be alarming to all Americans.
See? So there you have it. Today on CNN, a New York Times reporter warning everybody it would be easy for the Russians to do this at the county level. Everybody better be on the lookout. So here we have now officially the tainting of the 2018 midterms. And it all started with a Microsoft story that they've discovered the Russians hacking the websites and networks of never-Trump conservative organizations. I got to take a break here. Okay, time now to hit the phones, and I appreciate all of you out of your patience. This is Rhonda, South Bend, Indiana. I'm glad you waited. Welcome to the program. Hi.
Hi, Rush. I am just one small caffeinated American mom. I do not have a college degree, but what I do have is 4 boys from 28 down to 12. I have had the same husband for 31 years, and I'm a girl. So I have a pretty good grasp on gender identities. And I've been thinking a lot about this gender confusion, as you were talking about earlier in the program.
Yes, ma'am.
In my mind, it has part of its roots in the radical feminist movement. They started telling us that we were second class, second rate, held back, not achieving our full potential if we weren't in the office, career women, if we were having babies and we were home and pregnant in the kitchen, we needed to be more like men because we were missing out.
Right, they were selling out the sisterhood.
Yes. Well, you know what? I guess I was raised in the school of common sense, Rush. The other thing, then, the second prong on that fork is what they are now calling toxic masculinity. And the way they use it, I take umbrage at, because when the progressives are telling me that my sons and my husband, their innate masculine characteristics are toxic, I will go to the mat on that. Is it any wonder that this generation is confused about whether they're boys or girls?
Well, this generation, they are confused, but there's something worse. They're angry.
Yeah.
They have been enraged. They have been made mad. They have been lied to about all of this imaginary discrimination, toxic masculinity, white privilege. They've just been turned into angry, closed-minded zealots. You're right. I mean, the root of it with women, the anger in feminism, the anger in the women who consider themselves to be leaders of the various different sects of feminism is real. It is an anger that is deeply embedded in misery and unhappiness, and I think self-loathing for a host of reasons I could name, but it wouldn't be productive to do that. But it is rage and anger that is driving all of this. I'm glad you called. Thank you much.
Do you have trouble being...
We have an in-flight airplane emergency playing out. At 10:50 a.m. today, a Gulfstream G450 took off from Teterboro Airport, New Jersey. 16 people on board headed to London. On takeoff, news reports say that the two front tires blew out. Now, on a G4, the two front tires would be the nose gear. You got two tires there on the front. The wheel tires are single, but you have a couple of tires there on the front. So they're apparently blown. So all you got is a nose wheel strut, but with no wheels, where you can't land on that. So they circle the airport. I mean, if they're going to London, they've been a G4 with 16 people, got a pretty close to a full load of fuel. So they've got to circle and get rid of a lot of fuel. Originally, they were going to have them land back at Teterboro. Then they decided, no, too populated here. And they've sent the airplane in a holding pattern over a airport in Massachusetts someplace. I'm having a mental block on the name. Westlake, something, Massachusetts. It is being covered by cable news outlets because apparently there is a star on board the jet. A famous top 40 musician and rock and roll super crooner Post Malone. Now, I am not familiar with the genius and the work of Mr. Post Malone, but I did see a photo of the artiste on cable news, and he appears to have tattoos on his face that make it look like he is imprisoned behind barbed wire. Got a barbed wire tattoo across the top of his forehead, and then, of course, chain link or other kinds of barbed wire fencing elsewhere on his face. He's apparently a very popular top 40 genius and musical star. He's on board the plane, which that was a big enough story to cause Shep Smith to interrupt regularly scheduled programming on the Fox News Channel for breaking news. So why would somebody want to tattoo themselves? I don't know. Why can't you get, well, he's not the only artiste about whom you could ask that question. Anyway, let's head back to the phones. I owe it to those of you on hold to stick with it here because we went for quite a while without any phone calls. Next up is Steve in Jersey City. Great to have you. Hi.
Hey, Rush. I was calling in reaction to the gender assignment debate, and my theory is that the reason they're so upset that they are assigned a gender is that if given the choice, everyone would choose to be male.
Really? That's your experience? You really think that's what's driving this? That most of these people having the sexual identity crisis wish they were men?
I think that there's a lot of truth to that. If you look at the feminist movement, it's to make women more manly and to make men less manly, as to counterbalance.
You mean by telling feminine, the early days of the feminist movement, telling women they have to be more like men. They got to join the private clubs. They got to become CEOs. They got to do all this. And at the same time, they're turning the CEOs and other successful men that are their husbands into predators and child abusers and toxic masculinity exhibitors.
Exactly. So that they can take all the male attributes without being criticized about it. So they can be the strong leaders, and they can. And it's not just the social aspect, but it's just easier.
So, in your experience, then, is there a disgust at being born female among these people you're talking about, or a sadness, or
I think there's a jealousy. I mean, the biology of it, it's easier to be male. You don't have to do any monthly periods.
Yeah.
It's, socially, at least, well, I think worldwide.
Yeah, but you have to get used to being blamed for everything. I mean, it's not a one-way street.
No, but it's easy to be blamed if you don't really care.
Okay, look, you have fed the beast. I appreciate it. What he's talking about, if you missed it, in the first half hour of the program today, I had enough stories here to chronicle what I thought is evidence of the insanity, the descent into insanity and madness of the American left. And one of the three stories is my discovery of a new safe sex guide published by LGBTQIA. And the root of their anger, and they're all angry. All leftists are all angry all the time. They have chips on their shoulder about things you would never dream. But it is rage and anger that fuels them. And in this instance, the LGBTQIA group is really, really mad that a bunch of old white guys way back long time ago named human body parts and organs. And they did so ignoring the transgenders and the homosexuals and the bisexuals and the whatever the hell other divisions of sexuality that have been created or imagined to exist. And as such, they are enraged at the term vagina. It doesn't work anymore for them. I mean, we're talking people that are sometimes, they're not cisgender, they're transgender, they're lesbians, gay, bi, they're QIA, whatever. And so they're demanding that these various sexual organs be renamed. I'm not making this up. And they want the vagina to be renamed the front hole. Folks, I wish I was making it up. I would be considered a creative genius here, but I'm not. So anyway, our caller was reacting to this. And in this story, the justification they give for their rage and anger is sex assignment. The giveaway sentence is, traditional safe sex guides are often structured in a way that presumes everyone's gender is the same as the sex they were assigned at birth. And so in their world, human biology has nothing to do with their sexuality. No, somewhere along the line, they were assigned a sex, and that's why this group is not cool or down with it, because many of them are not what they were assigned. They want to be something else. He was calling to say the root of this is that a bunch of these trans women and angry feminists actually want to be men. That is the reason for his call. I had to explain it, because if you weren't here and you missed this in the first half hour and a call comes in an hour and a half later, what? I'm doing my best to try to keep everything in context for you here. In the meantime, LaGrange, California. Patrick, you're next. It's great to have you. Hi.
Yeah, mega dittos from the Motherlode, Rush.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Get right to the point right here, because I promised earlier I would. I think anybody who goes into media that has a security clearance should have it yanked just by going into media.
I agree.
And I'm I live in the red eastern portion of California, and I'm a deplorable and a bitter clinger. But I think Jason Chaffetz, I don't know if he still has his. He's on Fox.
Yeah, of course I know who he is. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so he's out there. Maybe I don't know if he still has his, but anybody who goes in the media and has a security clearance yanked, they still have their contacts. And my thing about Brennan is, you know, he still has his right to free speech. I just wish he'd exercise his right to remain silent.
I don't. As I said earlier, I want Brennan to keep talking. I want him to keep losing his mind. I want him to behave as he really is. Same thing with Phil Mudd. I want all of these arrogant, condescending superiorists to act out. That's another reason I love Trump. He forces them out. Donald Trump has this knack of exposing people as they actually are. We know that Brennan has been a phony all these years. We're learning who John Brennan really is. And we're learning who Phil Mudd really, and all of these people. We're learning who they really are. Now, your point about the security clearance is so right on the money. What is a security clearance? It means that you have been cleared, that you have passed the number of background checks, that you are good, that you're okay, that we can trust you. The nation can trust you with some level of our national security secrets. That's what a security clearance is, but that's not what it is anymore, folks, not inside the Beltway. A security clearance is a badge. It is a sign that you are a ranking member of the upper tier of the organization. But more than anything else now, it's a resume enhancement. It's worth money. It gets you hired on boards of directors. It gets you hired on media, cable, and broadcast networks to do analysis and commentary. It opens all kinds of doors in the private sector. Corporations. Let's say that there's a big defense contractor. Pick one out of the name. Boeing, Lockheed Martin. Let's say they want to hire somebody that has knowledge that is equivalent to what the United States intelligence community knows about volatile situations all over the world. That'd be a very valuable hire. So John Brennan leaves the CIA. He's got one of these clearances. He's up for grabs. If any one of these corporations, defense contractors, you name it, want to hire him on, he still has access to all of that classified data. So the point is, why would you put these people on media? Why would you put them on TV with what they know? A security clearance, among other things, means you can keep a secret. Does it not? In fact, isn't that essentially what it really means? That you have been investigated and you have passed a number of examinations and tests, and that your background has appeared safe to grant you access to the nation's secrets. Meaning you're not going to start blabbing them all over the place. You're not going to become a security risk. So why would somebody who goes on television or appears in the media not have their clearance yanked? Why would it be logical to presume that those people would no longer be allowed access to the nation's secrets? Because they have just taken jobs where, by virtue of being hired, they are to offer expertise and analysis that only they know because of their security clearance. So I totally agree with this. I think this whole security clearance thing is yet another eye-opening reality. The American people who may not have given any of this much thought. By the way, would you like to know how many people have them? 4.1 million people. And it is not automatic that when you leave government, you give up your clearance. It should be. That's another. Common sense tells me you leave government, you give it up. But that's not the way it is. And I'm telling you, having one of these things inside the Washington establishment, inside the Beltway, that is one of the markers. That's how you can tell other people you're better than they are, that you rank higher, that you're more important. And it is used in that way. It is valuable financially as a resume enhancement and so forth. And these people are demonstrating that they are not fit to have a security clearance. And I think they've demonstrated that long before this. You know, Brennan running around accusing Trump of being a traitor because of Trump's press conference asking the Russians to try to find Hillary's emails. He did it a second time, by the way. Brennan said that press conference that Trump had with Putin, that was selling in the United States out. That was a treasonous act. What Trump did, it was unconscionable. It's just, these people are losing their minds right in front of us every day and on TV. And I do think that has political value. I have a bunch of stories here from 2013, 2014 on security clearances, drive-by media thinking people like Clapper and Brennan should lose theirs. This is back during the Obama years. I'm going to get to that in just a second. I got a call here I want to take from Doug in Omaha. Doug, welcome. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hello, Rush.
How you doing, sir?
Oh, not too bad. Yourself?
Very well. Great to have you with us today.
I have a comment on what you were saying about the NFL on protesting.
It wasn't me. I was reading the comment from a fan at a sports website.
I see. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Okay. It's classic, what I was talking about earlier. I just did this 10 minutes ago. No, I can't find it. So I got to reconstruct this from memory. It was a comment. It was a solution, a compromise for all the players taking a knee and showing disrespect during the anthem. The idea is that the PA announcer will have a moment of silence prior to the anthem with the players on the field, where everybody will have a moment of silence for all of the social injustice that has taken place in America, and that we should recognize that we should try to get along. Everybody should treat each other with love, dignity, and respect, and good vibes and all this other stuff. And during that moment of silence, players could kneel, they could wave their fists around, they could protest, whatever. But then after that, the anthem would come, and everybody would have to then stand and show respect. You think that's a good idea?
I think so.
Why?
Well, I think the players could handle that. And I think majority of the people would understand that too.
Understand what, though?
Well, not for the...
You think people go into a football game to have a moment of silence for all of the unspecified social injustice that has happened in America, either totally or that week or maybe the night before, whatever? You think that's...
I think so. Because, I mean, it kind of, well...
Would you stop and not take a sip of beer during the moment of silence? Would it mean that much to you?
Sure. I mean, it's a moment. I mean, you know, it's not going to hurt anybody.
Would you put down the roach?
Yes.
Okay, well, then obviously it has deep meaning here with this fan. So there you go. I got to take a break. I wish I didn't. I'm out of time. I wish I weren't. There it was on CNN. Conservative group targeted by Russians. The guy that runs the group, I don't know his name, is on with Wolf Blitzer on CNN talking about how bad the Russians attacking them are. Jeez. We're surrounded by utter... Call from Nebraska thought that the idea of a moment of silence for social injustice, the victims of social injustice, or people could acknowledge that we're all human and that we should be nice to each other, treat each other with dignity and respect, nonviolence and all that, before the national anthem at an NFL game, every NFL game. He thought it was a brilliant idea. Was he serious or was he putting me on, do you think? Snerdley thinks he was dead serious. You don't think he was a seminar caller at all or somebody having fun here? Well, anyway, if any of you out there, whenever we get to you on the phones, whatever else you want to talk about, if you want to weigh in on that, have at it. Telephone number is 800-282-2882. I'm actually looking for it was a comment on a sports website that I was reading, the NFL website, from a reader of the website, and I can't... It's got to be here. I mean, even in the little cardboard box I use as a trash can here. It's got to be here. I just can't find it at the moment. There's other stuff I got to do and I have to get to. But that's basically the nub of it. And I'm trying to imagine myself at an NFL game. And the pianists all rise for a moment of silence for the victims in the United States of all the social justice, the social injustices that have happened. Moment of silence, and we should all now acknowledge that we're all in it together. We're all human, that we all have feelings, and that we treat each other with dignity and respect and love. And during this period, the players can protest, they can take a knee, they can raise their fists, they can do whatever, but after that, then they play the anthem, and everybody's got to stand, everybody, no protesting, no fists, no kneeling. It was presented as a compromise. I find it interesting that that would happen before the anthem in this scenario. But other things. ESPN, the question is TV going to televise that? No, TV. Well, I take it back. If something like that happened, that would be made to order for drive-by media. Made to order, but ESPN's already announced that they're not on Monday Night Football this year. They're not going to televise the anthem. And if you don't televise the anthem, you don't give the protesters any kind of platform whatsoever. I mean, it doesn't mean they're going to stop protesting, but nobody's going to see it. Well, that's not true, because the drive-by media will be there and videotape it, will show it. But it will not be televised live, at least on ESPN. And that is one of the solutions to the problem. You know, another solution, keep the players in a locker room. Just acknowledge the new reality, and that is that these players don't like the country much, and just keep them in the locker room during the anthem. And that way, whatever protesting that goes is not seen. That solution has been proposed too. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm more frustrated I can't find the damn thing. I want to be able to read it to you verbatim. And I'll come up with it. But look, there's other stuff out there. Michael Cohen has accepted a plea deal with federal prosecutors, and the drive-by media is going nuts. They can't. I mean, they're so excited here, they can barely contain themselves. Now, they have forgotten something. This is not Mueller's case. Michael Cohen did not reach a plea deal with the special counsel investigating Trump. If you remember, the special counsel passed this case off to the United States Attorney's Office, the Southern District of New York, which is the Manhattan office of the U.S. Attorney. They have the case. They are the federal prosecutors. Mueller passed this case off with full knowledge of what Cohen had, which means Cohen didn't have anything of value that Mueller wanted, which would prove collusion or obstruction, because it didn't happen. And so they're beside this, because they're hoping, oh my God, they're hoping so much that Cohen flipped on Trump. Oh my God, and they're just going to die to find out what happened. They're not stopping to think that Cohen might have been in trouble on his own. That Cohen might have stretched the boundaries of the law on his own, having nothing to do with Trump. I guarantee you Mueller would not have passed this case off if there was anything in there that he could use in his upcoming blistering report to nail Trump. So I think they're getting their hopes up here over something that's not going to materialize. I have no idea what crimes Cohen committed that he needed to enter a plea deal for. Some of it may involve Stormy Daniels, but let me tell you what they want. They want Trump's tax returns. They have always believed that Trump's tax returns hold the smoking gun evidence that the Russians have been propping Trump up. The Trump organization has been bought and paid for by the Russians for years and years and years. They think that Trump tax fraud will be readily seeable with Trump's tax returns. They think that it'll prove that Trump doesn't have anywhere near the money that he says he has and that he lives off of, that he's not a billionaire, that he's a total phony and a total fraud. And they think that's why Trump will not turn over his tax returns, and they've desperately wanted to see them. So they're hoping that Cohen's got some kind of knowledge that Trump's tax returns and involved with Trump in some kind of law breaking, that he's reached a plea deal here and thus has flipped on Trump. But I have to warn everybody that if that kind of evidence existed, I don't think Mueller would have passed the case off. There might be some Stormy Daniels stuff in there. I mentioned earlier, I got a text message from a friend late yesterday afternoon, and I was invigorated to see this. Anytime I see evidence that the general population understands something, it enthuses me. It gives me great comfort. And my buddy's message read this way. I'm sure you saw the tweet comparing Mueller to McCarthyism. Mueller is worse, and here's why. McCarthy had a limited mandate to investigate government employees. His scope was specific and defined. Mueller's mandate's not clearly defined. His scope is unlimited. The power he currently has is unprecedented and not anticipated or supported in our Constitution. And this is so right on the money. He then said, I don't believe we have a fourth independent branch of government, which we now have with Mueller. The Deputy Attorney General screwed up, not limiting the power and scope of Mueller. I'm confused why it hasn't been adjusted or refined. And I wrote back. I said, because the Deputy AG did not screw up. The Deputy AG intended exactly what you have just nailed here, buddy. And Mueller is plowing through the presidency and plowing through the Constitution and ripping both of them to shreds. He's establishing himself and his office, not as a fourth branch, but rather as the supreme branch. And that's exactly what's happening. Where is it written that the special counsel gets to sit in judgment of the president? There isn't anything like this in the Constitution, but that's how this is being portrayed. The media, the Deputy AG, everybody is treating this special counsel, Mueller personally, and his office and his investigation separately, as some powerful existence over here that somehow has power over Trump. Enough power to determine whether Trump stays in office or not. And there's no such power invested in either a special counsel or this one. The Constitution does not address this. That's why I say that Mueller is destroying the presidency here. He's literally plowing through it with this idea that the presidency is subject to an ongoing, never-ending review of some appointed lawyer and however many tainted investigators he can assemble. That's exactly how this is being portrayed. It's exactly how it's being presented in the media. And it's exactly how Mueller is playing it, which, again, I ask, how can the man with the greatest integrity and honor and honesty in Washington engage in this? Because this is shredding the Constitution. He is not a fourth branch. He's not a supreme branch. Trump can fire him anytime he wants. He does not have the power to judge Trump's presidency each and every day. Imagine if we did. Imagine if there were such a constitutional position. The American people vote, they elect a president. But over here is somebody appointed from the Department of Justice to conduct essentially an ongoing investigation, day in and day out, of the man the American people just elected. He can investigate 20 years ago, 30 years ago. He can investigate the present. There's no limit on what he can investigate. No limit to his subpoena power. There is no limit to who he can charge. There's no limit to how much money he can spend. That's what this is. And in the process, he's plowing through the president, the office of the presidency, as defined and explained in the Constitution. And I will guarantee you there are a lot of people, average, ordinary citizens, who do not know that the Department of Justice is part of the executive branch. They do not know it. They think it's a separate branch that has more power than the presidency, because that's how all this is being presented. And they think that Robert Mueller has the legitimate power to sit there and determine whether or not Donald Trump is fit to be president. They've accepted it because that's how the media and the Democrat Party has presented it. That's how the Department of Justice, some of the leaders in that DOJ, and at the top of the FBI, that's how they have played this whole thing. The drive-by media and the Democrat Party are waiting breathlessly for Robert Mueller to pronounce on the legitimacy of the Trump presidency. That's what they're waiting for. They are hoping and praying that Robert Mueller will write a report that comes as close as possible to saying Donald Trump's presidency is illegitimate, that he should not be serving, that he should not have won. That's what they want to see. And if that's what happens, that will be nothing more than a tremendous and desperately damaging assault on the United States Constitution, because there is no such power invested in any office, any department, or any individual in the Constitution. I think a lot of what's going on is the players here involved are trying to bait Trump into firing Mueller. They're desperately looking for Trump to obstruct. They don't have any collusion because there wasn't any, because all of this is so bogus. Every aspect of this is a gigantic fraud. But now they want a process crime. They want to get Trump on a process crime. And I'm not talking about perjury. They're going to try to get Trump for obstruction by firing Comey. Now, if they can try to bait Trump into firing Mueller or Rosenstein, then they can make a beeline for obstruction. By the way, it has come out how close Mueller and Comey are, that they have known each other for many, many years, and they've actually been kind of a tag team duo. One of them working in government, one of them working in the private sector, and each of them arranging things so that the other profits handsomely while in the private sector. They are very tight, very close, and Comey has admitted that he kept all of those memos of the conversations he had with Trump, and that he leaked them so that a special counsel would be named, and he wanted it to be Mueller. Look, folks, the trick is in here. I mean, there's a gigantic trick that's been played on everybody here that Comey and Mueller both have engineered with the help of Rod Rosenstein. And they are truly conspiratorial, thick blood brothers in affairs like this. And they have been long before Trump came along. I mean, it's been a mutual beneficial relationship. Power for one, profits in the private sector for the other, then they reverse roles. And, for example, Comey at Lockheed could have work steered to Lockheed where he would be bonused. Profit in the private sector that you never could on a government salary. And then Mueller would end up in a law firm as either a rainmaker or a high-profile case handler with a large client paying incomparable billable hours as a standard business practice. But this apparently is the arrangement that these two have had. Now, one other thing before I go to the break here, and that's I want to just backtrack a bit to this White House or government security business, the security clearance Brennan has had rescinded. Trump is talking about rescinding Bruce Orr's and maybe James Clapper's. I have here the Politico, November 21st, 2013. White House looks to scrub clearance list. This is the Obama years now, 2013. The Obama administration's ordered a government-wide reassessment of how almost 5 million Americans have been granted classified information security clearances and whether each person currently approved has need for such access. It's preposterous that 5 million people need national security clearance in this country. It's absolutely preposterous. It cannot be justified. 5 million. But the point is, in a directive obtained by Politico, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper questioned the booming roles of security clearance holders At last count, more than 4.9 million people had clearances, of whom over 1.4 million were cleared for access at the top secret level. Clapper wrote in a 3-page memo dated Halloween, "I write to express my concern about threats to national security resulting from the increasing number of people with eligibility for access." Clapper, 5 years ago, was worried that so many people having security clearances was itself a clearance threat, a security threat. And from Katie Pavlich at the town hall, published yesterday, "When Democrats demanded John Brennan resign." This is when Brennan was caught spying on the Senate Intelligence Committee, in specific, the staff of Dianne Feinstein. New York Times, July 31st, 2014, the CIA's reckless breach of trust. It's about John Brennan and spying on Dianne Feinstein's staff, where he lied under oath about it. You can go back to Drive-By Media archives 4 and 5 years ago and find that they wanted to get rid of Brennan then and take away his clearance then and take away the clearance of a lot of people they didn't think should have them. But that was then, and this is now, and so back then may as well have never happened. Wherever you find concentrated, undiluted way of life, Michael Cohen has surrendered to the FBI. The plea deal supposedly involves campaign finance violations, which that might be related to payoffs to Stormy Daniels, the porn star. Anyway, we'll see. Just keep in mind that Mueller passed that case off to the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney's Office. So there's nothing in there about the Russians and in it. I have another example of the left's public descent into madness and insanity. This is a story at the New American website. The headline, "Killing Virtue. School pressured into removing quote, encouraging girls to be ladies." Now, this is at a school in Houston, the Gregory Lincoln Middle School, Houston Independent School District. Students in kindergarten through the 8th grade attend this school, according to its website. And there's a wall at this school that has some quotations on it. It's a decorative wall, but it has a particularly offensive quote on the wall. And this is the quote: "The more you act like a lady, the more he will act like a gentleman." That quote has enraged militant feminazis, and they demanded that the quote be removed from the wall. I have a tweet here from one of these enraged women. There's a picture of the quotation on the wall. The tweet says, "This is the wall at Gregory Lincoln Middle School in Houston. It's perpetuating horrible gender stereotypes, shaming women, and relinquishing boys of all responsibility. It's a sexist, misogynistic, and discriminatory. I am horrified." Again, the quote: "The more you act like a lady, the more he will act like a gentleman." It's an advice quote for young women. And we've all been raised with a variation of this quote. We've all been raised with it. It has very many different forms. I mean, parents had a version of this. Bring home the wrong kind of girl, and you would get the quote. You would get the message. And if the girl brought home the wrong kind of guy, her parents would tell her a version of this quote. Now, this particular quote is attributable to Sidney Biddle Barrows. Does anybody remember who she is? The Mayflower Madam. That's right. She ran one of the highest high-class escort services in Manhattan, and is thought that she would know about acting like a lady and not. But a woman saw the quote, a student saw the quote and was horrified, was scared to death. The more you act like a lady, the more he'll act like a gentleman. She was offended because I have to act like a lady in order for him to not act like a brute and a rapist. Is that how it works? No, that's not what it means, but that's how she's interpreting it. So anyway, the school caved. They caved. They caved inside of 30 minutes. And the quote is gone. I have two stories here that I want to share with you. Backed up one after the other. Ready? First story, headline, China assigns every citizen a social credit score to identify who is and who is not trustworthy. The Chicoms are rolling out a high-tech plan to give all of its 1.5 billion citizens a personal score based on how they behave. But there are consequences if a score gets too low, and for some, that's cause for concern, says eyeball CBS News New York, Ben Tracy. And now the personal example part of the story. When Li Hu recently tried to book a flight, he was told that he was banned from flying because he was on the list of untrustworthy citizens. Liu is a journalist who was ordered by a court to apologize for a series of tweets that he wrote and was then told his apology was insincere. I can't buy property. My child can't go to a private school, he said. You feel you're being controlled by this list all the time. And the list is now getting longer as every Chicom citizen is being assigned a social credit score. It's a fluctuating rating based on a range of behaviors. It's believed that community service and buying Chicom-made products can raise your score. Fraud, tax evasion, smoking, and non-smoking areas can drop your score. Now, who is doing the monitoring here? Well, that would be the Chicom government. The Chicom government is basically studying every citizen, and unbeknownst to them until recently, scoring them on their proper communist behavior. And if their scores get low, then they can't travel, they can't leave home, they can't have children in some cases. And in some cases, they can't buy property, and if they do have kids, they may not be able to send them to private school. Okay, that's Chicom, studying every citizen and assigning them not a sexual gender, oh no, a behavioral score. Next story, headline, Facebook employs trust ratings for users but will not tell you your score. The social network Facebook is predicting your trustworthiness in a bid to fight fake news. Users receive a score on a scale of 0 to 1 that determines if they have a good or bad reputation. Your Facebook usage is being monitored and may be converted to a trustworthiness score. The rating system was revealed in a report by the Washington Post, which says it is in place to help identify malicious actors. Facebook tracks your behavior across its site, uses that information to assign you a rating. Tessa Lyons, who heads up Facebook's fight against fake news, said one of the signals that we use at Facebook is how people interact with articles. Oh, so you're on Facebook and you're reading articles. And what you do afterward is what Facebook is monitoring. Do you enthusiastically recommend that article? Do you ignore that article? Do you share it with others? Do you print it? Do you amplify it? Facebook knows. If Facebook thinks the article is fake news, then you get a negative score, and you are considered to be untrustworthy with fake news. Facebook is engaging in the identical behavior that the Chicom government is engaging in. And both of them are leftist organizations. The Chicoms, of course, epitomize modern-day communism, and Facebook seeks to epitomize modern-day communism. At Facebook, everyone and everything will be judged and categorized, and politics will be a factor. This is how collectivists think and operate. This is why they are dangerous when they're in power. I remember when Obamacare was being debated, and I remember making a prediction. I issued a warning to people. I said, I want you to stop and think about this. The way this is shaping up, and the hoops that you have to go through to get insurance, how much you have to pay for it. And then when you have to get treated, remember they're going to have death panels and all this. They have limited resources. You're standing in line somewhere at a hospital, the emergency room, and all of a sudden, whether or not you're Republican or Democrat might matter. People said, come on, Rush, you unnecessarily get people frightened and worked up over something that would never happen. Never happen, huh? Well, it's happening right now, apparently, with the Chi-Coms, and Facebook's not far behind. They are studying how you interact with news. And if they think that you believe fake news and that you spread it, you amplify it, you share it, then you are not considered trustworthy. And your ability to use Facebook and interact will thus be limited. And politics will be a factor, Facebook openly admits, in their determination of your trustworthiness. Now, is anybody, when you hear this, is anybody alarmed at the similarities in policy, behavior, attitude, all of it, between the Chi-Com government and Facebook?
Rush Limbaugh.
Funk Brothers here on the music melodies for What's Going On by Marvin Gaye in the bumper rotation here. All right. MSNBC, CNN can barely keep their clothes on, folks. They're about to descend into a massive live orgy of happiness. There are two people related to Trump now that are in court flipping. One would be Cohen, the other would be Manafort. They are convinced this is the beginning of the end of Trump. Here is the New York Times story on Cohen. The headline, and not that you can trust this. This is the thing. But the key to this, to me, is in the opening sentence. Let's see. Yep, opening sentence. Headline, Trump's former fixer Michael Cohen reaches plea agreement over payments to women. Here is the opening sentence paragraph. Quote, Michael Cohen, President Trump's former warrior, reached a plea agreement with prosecutors investigating payments he made to women for Mr. Trump. But the deal does not include cooperation. Two people familiar with the matter said. Does not include cooperation? Well, now, since we're discussing who assigns gender when, and various other leftist contortions as they go through life trying to be happy, what does this mean? The deal does not include cooperation, but they're telling us that Cohen flipped. Well, not according to this. If the deal does not include cooperation, it doesn't mean he flipped on anything. It means they had him dead to rights, and he copped to some of it in order to spare everybody the time and cost of a trial to convict him. And in exchange, he got a little better deal, which we don't know what it is, if this is accurate. But I imagine that part of it is, and the New York Times got to be somewhat disappointed to have to include that in the story. The deal does not include cooperation. Well, then, what else is there? As far as these people, MSNBC, CNN are concerned, that's all that matters is the cooperation. That means flipping. That means Cohen didn't flip. It may mean Cohen has nothing to flip with. And it's probably the same thing with Manafort. We will see, my friends, but I'm telling you, it's a lot of people going to have a lot of laundry and dry cleaning, I mean, by tonight. Because you're going to see, they can barely contain themselves here. There's probably a mad dash in a green room, all their guests to be on the next panel. You could have panels at 25 people before this day's over. Professor Dershowitz remoting in from Martha's Vineyard. You know, there are few things more compelling at a family. Do you have family reunions? How many of you do this? You know, a lot of people do. There are family reunions. A lot of people still do these, and there are versions of it. Maybe the whole family doesn't get together, but Christmas can sometimes be the same thing as a family reunion or Thanksgiving. And when people drag out all of the old movies and photos and tapes that nobody's seen for a while, except now they can't, you know, because nobody's got a Super 8 projector anymore. If they do, I guarantee it doesn't work. And then nobody's got a screen. The same thing if you took pictures and had them delivered as slides, you need a projector for that, VHS and Betamax. So people have all of these old family photos and films and videos, and nobody can watch them. Until now, most of those old movies, Super 8 film, video cassettes, can be transferred onto DVDs or computer thumb drives so that you can watch them and play them and copy them and share them. Now, this is not an easy task, the transferring process, because it takes first you have to buy the equipment, and then you have to spend the time. And you can't buy high-speed dubbing stuff at home. I mean, that's commercial professional gear that you wouldn't spend the money on. But there fortunately is a group of people that have, they call Legacy Box, and they've got high-speed dubbing, they have got the latest duplicating equipment, and they've got all the old formats. And they can pretty much match what you have. And you put what you want transferred into a box they send you. That's why it's called Legacy Box. You put your legacies in there. It's a specially shielded box so that X-rays, quantum physics rays, and all that doesn't destroy your stuff while it's en route. This is a large-scale operation in Tennessee. They've been doing this now for 400,000 families and counting. They know just what they're doing. They can get it done inside of 2 weeks. They keep you advised of the process as it goes. And eventually you get it all back, plus all of it on a DVD or however many it takes, and thumb drives or a combination of the two. LegacyBox.com, that's where you start this process. LegacyBox.com/rush will get you 40% off what they normally charge, or whatever plan that you choose, depending on how much material that you have to be transferred. It's really a great service. It's something that you could not do on your own. And once you learn it's available, you'll make tracks to get it done. LegacyBox.com/rush. Get rid of all the detail, let them handle the work, and you just get to relive all those old photos, films, and memories.
Unfiltered and